Hey HBs, you're listening to Heaving Bosoms, the podcast where two best friends recap romance novels while catching up, snarking, and loving on the genre. This week, I am still a bleary-eyed resident of Camp Newborn Snuggles, so we have an excellent little ear snack for you. I had the pleasure of talking about an amazing book with one of the sweetest and most astute people on the planet, Jenny Nordbak from the Wicked Wallflowers Club podcast. Here's our discussion of Priest by Sierra Simone. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Melody.
How are you?
I am fabulous. How are you?
Excellent. I am really, really fucking stoked. Mostly is how I feel about this.
Dude, yeah. This is exciting.
Yeah.
We're making the first of the crossovers happen.
We are forging new territory in romance novel podcast. Landia, I guess. Is how I'm gonna phrase that.
It's a new colony.
Yeah, it is. It's a nice, beautiful space where we frolic, and there are books, there are flower crowns, all the good things in life, I think.
Shirtless men, I think. There would have to be.
There would have to be so many cabana boys. Yeah. All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm here, not with Erin this time. We are doing our series for my maternity leave. So Jenny Nordbak from Wicked Wallflowers Club has come on to recap a book with me. And I'm super stoked about it because a lot of people have requested that we do something like this in some capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm super stoked.
Yeah, I am not Erin, and I will try. I feel like when people have a substitute host on my favorite podcast, I'm always like, shut up, not Erin. I don't want to hear you, so I will try not to be too annoying.
No, I think that our listener is going to really, really enjoy it. And we chose a book where you have a metric fuck ton of insight. So that's exciting.
Yeah. Okay. So we should just lay this out up front.
Let's do it.
Because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I used to be a dominatrix, if you guys are not familiar with me. So I was a dominatrix right out of college. And then I wrote a book about it and it came out last year. The book is called The Scarlett Letters, My Secret Year of Men in an LA Dungeon. And it catalogs that whole time in my life and time after that and to where I am now, married with babies and whatever. So yeah, I know a fair bit about BDSM. I have seen some shit. So when Melody reached out, she was like, what book do you want to do? Do you want to hate read one and one that's got bad BDSM? And I was like, yes, I do, but I can't.
But I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to try it. We'll do that over drinks sometime.
Yes, please. Well, I only asked that because I feel like there's so many misconceptions about BDSM and there's so much bad that happens that gives BDSM and kink in general a bad name. So I was like, we could use it as a platform for you to be like, hey guys, this thing right here that happened, that's not safe. That's abuse.
Yeah.
This is different.
Here's what not to do. Right? Yeah, it would be totally effective. But instead, we're going to do it using the magnificent Sierra Simone.
Oh my gosh. Sierra motherfucking Simone. I read Sinner first. And so when you suggested Priest, I was just so excited because I wanted to read it anyway. But since Sarah McLean has stolen my soul, one day she made a Twitter post about Sinner. And I was like, well, that's an obvious one click. I can't not.
Yeah.
And I loved that. And now Priest is the first book in the series. And oh, good Lord. Did it not? It did not disappoint.
Yeah. So on our show, Wicked Wallflowers Club is another romance podcast. And I had asked during one of our episodes for a hot brother menage was what I was after. Kind of questionable incest maybe.
Yeah.
And Lee Kramer was like, all right, it's not brothers, but Sierra Simone has this trilogy, her new Camelot trilogy, and they feel like brothers. And it's a menage and it's super hot and whatever. So I was about to read that. And same thing, Sarah McLean. I told Sarah that I was about to read a Sierra Simone and she's like, is it Priest?
I know.
And I was like, no. And she's like, then stop and read priest.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. And yeah. Well, and we were camping at the time. We went camping for a month for sort of maternity leave when my baby was 2 months old. So I had a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old, and we went camping for a month in the Pacific Northwest.
That's amazing.
So we were in like bumfuck nowhere with no signal. And I read priest in like one night, and I'm like, I have to talk to someone. And there was no one to talk to except my husband. So my husband just had to sit there and listen to me like wax poetic about this book. And of course, I'm like, and then I don't want to get,
totally
too far ahead of ourselves, but he did X, Y, and Z with the holy implements.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, what the fuck are you reading? And I'm like, you don't understand.
No, you don't understand how beautiful it is.
Yeah.
It sounds just taboo and like, I don't know, but it's not. It doesn't feel taboo.
Yeah. It's not taboo for the sake of being taboo.
Yes. And I feel like throughout the book, she manages to elevate the taboo to actually sacred and holy in a different way. God, it's so I am not religious. Listeners know this. I did actually spend quite a bit of time going to Catholic Mass because, because I volunteered at a local hog farm while I was in 4-H so that I could get discounts on my 4-H pigs. And they were super Catholic. So I was like, of course, I'll go and have some Jesus with you. Excellent. Great. Let's do that. Like right after chores.
To get your discount.
That's right. That's right. Well, I also loved the family. They were just like amazing people. So I have spent a lot of time in Catholic churches, and there is something about that space that is so moving a lot of times, even if you're not necessarily Catholic.
Yeah.
So I felt a lot of that in this book too.
Yeah.
It was really, really nice.
I've definitely found that. So my degree is in archaeology. So I've spent a lot of time in like ancient spaces, and particularly more in the old world. And yeah, you go into some of these churches like King's College in Cambridge or anywhere with a vaulted ceiling.
Oh,
vaulted ceilings like turn me on.
Vaulted ceilings and stained glass.
I have some kind of weakness for it.
Yeah.
And it has this like visceral impact on you. So the idea of like this explosive sexual chemistry acted out in that sacred space is like,
it's mind blowing. Exactly.
That was me doing a mind blown gesture, by the way.
It was.
Could have been anything to go with the sound effects. So.
Exactly. Okay, should we jump in?
We should. Let's do it.
Oh my God, I'm so stoked. Okay, so we have Tyler Bell and Poppy Danforth in this beautiful tale of, I don't know. What's a good word for it?
It's forbidden.
Oh, it is.
Of like forbidden love.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so Tyler is a priest.
Please, Father Bell.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You're right. I'm doing the sign of the cross right now. How dare I?
He is not Tyler yet, or to you.
No, you are so correct. Yes. Father Bell is serious business. He is 29. He is hot as balls. Like the one of the side characters, she's a 60-ish-year-old, just wonderful, rich, beautiful side character. She talks later in the book about how she always thought that he was wasting his body and his potential and like his virility by joining the priesthood so young. She's just like, this is a crime against women. Thank you.
It's so great. Yeah.
It's so good. And the prologue, so I take issue with the prologue, actually.
Huh.
I do, because it ends with him being like, I broke my vows on the altar. I'm like, Bish, you broke your vows way before that. But like,
yeah, I do. I've got in my notes marked like lie number 1, lie number 2.
It's so true. Well, and it's a very like Judeo-Christian view of sex and how sex is only penis and vagina penetration.
Penis all the way in the vagina.
If
it's only an inch and a half, it's okay, but we'll get there.
Yeah, if you're playing just the tip, there's some questions.
I love that they end up playing just the tip. I was like, oh my God, how old are you?
I loved it.
It doesn't count. It's not all the way in.
It's not. It's just like a little taste. Okay, so Tyler is sitting in the confession booth, and he's setting himself up to be a pretty modern priest. He's like, this confession booth it's old and it's overwhelming and it's very like, he wants it to be nicer. But then in walks a woman with a throaty laugh, and she's a little nervous. She's wondering why she's even there and what she should be doing. She tries to leave, and he's like, stop.
Yeah.
It's so good. And he's like, I used a voice that I haven't used in a really, really long time. A voice that like is not appropriate in this space.
Dom voice.
Yeah.
She pulls Dom voice out of him, and he's like tried to close that part of his life off.
Yeah. And he can't focus because he's like, I haven't laid eyes on this woman. I don't know what is creating this sense in me, but it's happening.
There's something interesting that happens in that scene where he's like attracted to her voice and he's kind of intrigued, but what he really responds to is this cry for help that she gives him. She says, I need to know that everything will be okay.
Oh.
And it just like speaks to this place in his soul where he's like, isn't that what we're all looking for?
Yeah.
Like, don't we all need to know that? And most of the time we don't. And so that was interesting to me, that it's not so often in romance novels, it's that just like bone deep attraction first.
Yes.
But there is this like emotional connection that he feels and a desire to help her as well.
Yeah.
Which I think was important.
Absolutely. He hears her vulnerability, and the line I highlighted was, he wants to kiss away every single tear, because she starts crying in the confession booth. She's still really vague about what she's upset about. She just knows that she's looking for something and she's not sure where she's going to find it. And then she leaves abruptly, and he kind of doesn't know what to do with himself. He thinks about her for the rest of the day.
He hasn't even seen her, right? Like, he doesn't catch a glimpse of her this time. He's just got this like impression of who she is.
Yeah.
Well, and I love when someone says like, all right, this is a book about a priest who breaks his vows. And you're like, there are certain scenes that have to happen if that's going to be the case. And she sits down on the other side of the confessional and, you know, starts saying those words that we all know whether we're Catholic or not. And just that connection between the two of them, I was like, yes, give it to me.
Yeah. And it happens from jump, which is so awesome. Yeah, and then we learn a little bit more about him. We learn that he's young. As Aaron would say, he's still capable of identifying women as sexy. But he hasn't ever felt compelled by someone at all during his time as a priest until now, let alone by just her voice. Jenny, I have to be honest with you. I pictured her having your voice.
I love that.
You have got an excellent voice. I don't mean to objectify your vocal cords. However,
I'm blushing.
All right. So he loves The Walking Dead.
I love that tidbit.
Yeah.
Like he's just this, he's what you want a modern priest to be. Like, he's a human fucking being. Because I think you picture like a priest and they're just in the church all the time, but like, what do they do in their off time? They have to have a life, and they don't just read the Bible all the time. Yeah,
absolutely. And then we jump to the next week. She returns to confession, right? And he catches a glimpse of red lipstick, and she says that she's stalked him on the website, which, you know, so she has obviously identified him as a sexy man.
Right.
And then we get a little bit of her confession. She's been working a job somewhere in the sex industry. We don't know where. She does say that she's not a quote unquote prostitute.
Right.
And then my favorite part about this is the nuance that she doesn't feel bad about the sex work. She feels bad because she feels like she should feel bad about the sex work.
Yeah.
And I fucking loved that so much.
Yeah. It elevates it beyond the obvious of like, oh, I've, you know, been a bad slut. It's like, I've been a slut and I liked it and I don't feel bad. So I kind of feel bad, or I feel conflicted that I don't feel bad.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me that everyone else would feel bad and I don't?
Yeah. And she's feeling this tension between fully indulging this like baser version of herself, and it's just as limiting as it. I think she feels like almost caught in this Madonna whore complex.
Totally.
Yeah, that's what I got from it anyway. So yeah, she wants a life where she can have both, guys.
Yeah. She just wants to be treated like a dirty slut in the bedroom.
Yes.
But still be able to be respected as an intelligent woman outside of the bedroom. Don't we fucking all?
Isn't that? Oh my gosh.
That's the dream, guys.
It really, really is. Yeah. Poppy is a great example of the fact that your politics do not need to match your bedroom preferences.
Totally. Yeah.
And I dig that about her.
Yeah. My other note from this chapter is that his first thought upon seeing her mouth is that he wants his dick in it. And
yes!
I'm here for it.
Me too. Me too. He's like, before I could stop myself, I thought, I want my dick in that mouth. I want that mouth crying my name. And then it's just so good. So he pulls himself together and she says that she's going to come back to confession next week. And he's like, I look forward to it, Poppy. And the way he said her name was in that voice, the one I didn't use anymore, the one that I used to have women dropping to their knees and reaching for my belt without me having to say so much as please. Oh boy, guys.
Yeah.
Father Bell is doing things to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're off to the races now.
Literally, because he has to go running to try to get his boner to go down because
he has to. He needs to send his blood elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because it will not. Yeah. So he's out for his daily run. He's listening to Britney Spears, which I also loved that detail.
Yeah.
And I loved the way it started funny and then becomes incredibly sweet later in the book.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So a friend of mine just called me the other day and he was like, what was your name for my old iPod? Because his old iPod was like schizophrenic, I swear. It would go on random and go everywhere. And I was like, oh, SchemePod. That was my name for it. Because that iPod was up to something. It really was. And this time he had to call me because it went from Death Cab to Britney to Wu-Tang Clan.
Wow.
And that is what this section reminded me of because I was just like, that's perfect. That thing either has a plan or it's anarchy. I don't know.
That's a flashback to like driving in the van to debate tournaments in like early high school. Like that combination of music.
Yes, absolutely. Where somebody was in charge of the mix that week and you were like, what the fuck, dude? What's happening?
But I secretly kind of like it.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay. So he's running, listening to Britney, and he's trying to run Poppy out of his mind. It's not working, guys. It's not going to work. Yeah. Frankly, spoiler alert, not going to work. And he feels like he's very committed to the priesthood. Oh, and I love this too. The nuances in this are so good. He says that he doesn't know if he wants to control himself. It doesn't say that he doesn't think he can control himself. He doesn't think he wants to. And I just dug that so hard. Like he actually makes the distinction. It's so good.
Yeah.
It made my feminist heart swoon. Although this whole character throughout the book makes my feminist heart swoon.
Yeah. He's something. Yeah.
He's so great.
And I've got notes because there's a character named Sterling who's like the foil to him and is like shows you just how fine that line is between being this like rock star feminist ally and being a misogynist prick.
Yes.
And it's like a razor's edge, but Father Bell is on the right side of it.
Oh, Father Bell is walking that line. Oh, it's so good. Okay, so he decides that he's going to tell her he can't hear her confession. He's like, I'll refer her to another priest, but I obviously need to get this temptation out of my life. And then all of a sudden, he runs into her also running. Not literally this time, but she stops him because she can hear Britney in his headphones. And so she's like, hey, what's going on here? Like, what's going on with you? And he loves her sweaty runner's body. And then he notices that she loves his sweaty runner's body.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And they're both not wearing much and they're already sweaty. And yeah.
Oh, my favorite line from this one is her eyelashes made me hard. That was a new benchmark for me.
Right.
Okay, guys, I'm going to try not to make this into the audiobook version of this novel, but I want to. You have to go read this. Okay. So she asks about his office hours because she's like, I was thinking I might come on days that are not confession days. And he's like, yeah, that's fine. And his response about religion here is so awesome because it's not the hard Catholic sell. Not that there is a specific Catholic hard sell, just like a religious hard sell. But he's just like, spirituality is something, but religion is not necessarily for everyone. And I don't want you to feel pressured to specifically seek out Catholicism. And she's like, well, does a crazy hot priest give me a good enough excuse? Oh! And then she just basically jogs away. She just leaves him hanging in that space of like, is she flirting with me?
Yeah. Like she's not allowed to flirt, but I think she is. And he's so, and he's so guilty in this scene. Like he's just not in a way that annoys me. I don't do well with really angsty books where it's like, dude, just go fuck her. It's fine.
Right.
He's toiling over it in a really sensible way. And he has legitimate things at stake. Like there's a lot that he would lose. And, we haven't even gotten into all the layers of that yet.
Right.
But yeah, he's so guilty, but not in an angsty, annoying way. And it kind of excites me that he's that guilty.
Yeah.
I've even made that note. I was like, his guilt turns me on, but I'm twisted like that. Like, I like that he can't have it, but he wants it so bad that
No, absolutely. Well, it makes the build, it gives the build that many more layers. And then it also makes the payoff that much more satisfying, or like the scenes where he comes to terms or seems to come to terms with his wants and his religion or his place in that religion. It's very cool.
Yeah.
So then he's taken a lot of cold showers, everyone. Yeah. He's doing all the things you're supposed to do. He says that he needs his collar, especially that day, to remind himself that he practices self-denial for his God, parish, and sister. And he doesn't want his interest in Poppy to destroy everything he's worked so hard for. Because not only is there abuse in his family background, but he came into this parish right after an abuse scandal with the former priest. Yeah. And so he's been working really, really hard to rebuild the trust of the entire parish and community. So you're right. There really is so much at stake for him in even contemplating this tryst,
Yeah, he has joined the priesthood in part to set out to prove that priests can be true to their vows and that they can be decent human beings. And it's completely different from the abuse that happened in the parish before, but it's still breaking your vows. So it's like it even goes beyond the normal priest not wanting to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So he goes and visits his mom and his brothers, and it's very cute. We learn that Sean, the guy from Sinner, has just been invited to this secret gentleman's club where it's elite and secret and things happen there. And who knows, really? It's all cloak and dagger and, I don't know, smoke. That's what I meant. Smoke and, I don't know. So I'm over it. Moving on. Yeah.
I think you were right with cloak and dagger.
Smoke and mirrors. That's what I meant.
Oh,
probably literally.
Cloak and dagger and smoke and mirrors. Two different pairings that we could use here.
In this way, it's probably literally smoke and mirrors. So why don't we go with that one?
Quite literally.
So we also learn about his sister's suicide here. And basically, we'll only get into it once. She was abused by a priest for most of her childhood into her teens, and then ended up committing suicide in their garage when she was 19. And it obviously tore the family apart because they were very committed to the Catholic faith, and most of them have sort of walked away from it, whereas Father Bell obviously tripled down.
Yeah.
And it's been his mission to be a voice of sex positivity in all of the right ways, and also curtailing abuse within the priesthood. So there really is so much happening in his psychology regarding this. And then on his way home, he starts thinking to himself, hold on, Poppy mentioned a club where there were highfalutin dudes.
And illicit activities that you would feel guilty about.
Could this be where she used to work? Yeah. And he is completely jealous, and I didn't hate it. I usually hate things like that. But yeah, so he decides to find her and tell her to definitely visit his office hours. Oh, I loved it. He said, I sensed that she was someone who was not easily lost, not easily broken, and for something to send her into a strange confession booth and to bring her to tears, well, no one should have to bear those kinds of burdens alone, especially someone as sexy as Poppy. Stop it. It's so good. And then they do literally bump into each other running.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells her to come to the office hours. She touches his chest. It's good stuff.
Yeah, his sweaty chest.
Oh. Oh, and this is where it kind of goes off the rails for me. Like, once I got to know Poppy a little bit more, I was like, oh, this totally makes sense, because I feel like she had a bit of an agenda from the start. But upon first read, I was like, who talks to anybody like this,
right?
Let alone a really hot priest? What's happening right now?
Yeah, it's a really interesting use of perspective, because it's the entire book is written in first person from the male perspective, which you don't normally get in romance novels. There have been some that do it recently, and I'm actually a little picky about first person. I don't usually love it. It's got to be really well done. And so because we're only seeing it from Father Bell's perspective, it's like, yeah, you don't know. Like, looking back on it, you're like, she probably ran into him on purpose in her scantily clad running gear. And, you know, like,
maybe
she was probably stalking him and like, oops, I ran into you. But because we're only getting it from his perspective, that doesn't occur to him.
Totally.
So, yeah, you kind of wonder from the beginning, like, at what point does her I'm going to seduce the hot priest agenda set in? Like, is it from the time she looks him up online and sees that he's a hot priest and he's been kind to her and she's like, I want that? Or does it happen more organically? But you don't, because we're seeing it from his perspective, we don't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. The only times, there are 3 times where we get Poppy's perspective, and it's all, well, the first 2 are confessions, literal confessions. And then the last one happens in the epilogue. And I was with it up until then. And then I was just like, in the epilogue, I was like, who the fuck is she talking to? You know what I mean? Like, me, the reader, like, I couldn't understand, you know, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I understood why it happened. I was just like, it made me have questions in a meta way that kind of took me out of the experience, you know?
When it didn't close it didn't wrap it all up in a nice package the way you want the epilogue to necessarily. It was like, wait, but hold on, I just saw something else. Like,
yeah, totally. All right, so
meeting in his office hours.
Office hours. So they're looking at each other. They're sitting next to each other on chairs. We as opposed to what, donkeys? Like, what kind of sentence is that, Melody? On chairs, everyone.
I mean, okay, to be fair, in Melody's defense, she is clarifying that they are not sitting in the booth with a wall separating them. That's where your head was. We're now sitting like normal fucking human beings in a room on chairs, not donkeys.
Right. Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah.
I really do need a translator a lot of times. So she tells her a bit about herself. She's a blue-blooded lady from the Northeast, and from like a standard cold Anglo family, waspy, with money for generations, and she just rejected all of that and scrammed after graduating.
Yeah, like literally just walked away.
Yeah.
Hasn't talked to her parents in 3 years or something.
Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah. And she sort of mentions this dude named Sterling, that he broke her heart, but doesn't go into it. And then she tells him all about her work at the club. We do find out that is the club she was working at. Mm-hmm. She started there and she just loved it in a lot of ways. Where does it say?
Okay, I've got a quote I can read.
Yeah, please.
All right.
Yeah.
It's a longer one, but you guys have to stay with me on it. Okay.
We will.
I loved that they would become almost wild with the need to touch me. So wild that they would offer me astounding sums of money to come home with them, to leave the club and become their mistress. But I never accepted, even though many of them were handsome, even though I wasn't in a place where I could pretend money was no object. But something about it was antithetical to my very nature, and I couldn't imagine accepting any of those offers. Isn't that a ridiculous notion? A stripper insisting on preserving her virtue.
Oh.
And I was like, I've been there, was what struck me, was like, I worked as a dominatrix, but in the equivalent of a club, a dungeon, where, so no sex, no penetration, no traditional sex acts. So no blowjobs, no hand jobs, no exchange of bodily fluids, none of that kind of stuff. everything else is fair game.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, men would just be like driven wild with it. And they would start offering you insane stuff like, you know, an apartment or whatever. And they were serious. And it was like the idea that you could drive a man to that point was so powerful. And like such a rush that like you would kind of get hooked on, not necessarily that specifically, but yeah, just being able to wield that effect shamelessly. Where like, you know, in normal daily life, we're supposed to be like, oh, I don't know I'm attractive. And like, that's what's supposed to be attractive. But to be in this space where you could be like, yeah, like I have that impact and I fucking like it. Is cool. And so like that she pulled that out here, I was like, yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of freedom in that we don't get in most public spaces.
Yeah.
It's a really neat layer.
But then she tells him about touching herself in front of club patrons.
Oh my God. And she's like, these are the men who would have hired me, married me, donated to my charities. And I would watch them rubbing themselves through their hundreds of dollars trousers. And then I would allow them to watch me bring myself off in these back rooms. And he thinks to himself, like, filthy girl. Dirty, filthy girl.
And he likes it.
He loves it.
Yeah. And he thinks he's about to like lose control and like crawl across the booth and have his way with her. And her phone goes off and saves him.
Yeah, it's so, so good. Although we do find out here that she was actually starved for sex during this time period.
Yep.
She says that she didn't accept any of those offers. And, you know, sex obviously was against the rules in the club, but she also didn't date a lot outside of it. So I did wonder a little bit at that. It seemed like a bit of a hedge to me. You know what I mean? Like she enjoyed the space. She would touch herself in front of these people, but she never actually had sex. So maybe she still is like redeemable.
Yeah.
I don't know. There
like
was a little bit of that.
Cross this line. Yeah. I totally get what you're saying where it's like she's a bad girl, but she's still okay. Like, would she still be okay as our heroine if she had just fucked them indiscriminately? Like, and I don't know is the answer.
Or like dated outside, like, you know, done something else. She's not necessarily patrons.
She's a pure stripper.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was
yeah, I can go with you on that. But I think I can also understand because the line she has put above about a stripper insisting on preserving her virtue. There was something for me when I was working in that space too, where I think in the almost 2 years that I was working at the dungeon, I did not have traditional sex with a single person. Like I was doing crazy shit all over the place at work and outside of work, but I didn't. And it was almost, like I was holding that back for me. And I wanted that, like, that should mean something or there should be some deeper level of intimacy to that. Or like, I don't know, there was like some kind of internal personal power in holding that back. So that did also kind of ring true for me and like felt authentic where I was like, yeah, I've been there where you're holding on to something. You're giving the rest of it away and you're enjoying it, but there is something left for you.
Oh, Jenny. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I didn't think about it like that.
But I get what you're saying too about like, but a pure stripper. So
it wasn't a deal breaker for me. Yeah. I dug it still, but it was just like this line of like, why is that necessary? Or why is that? But I like that. I like that perspective. So she gets a work call and leaves. And he's like, oh God, oh fuck. I'm so glad. Like, I don't know what I would have done otherwise. And then he immediately walks over to his desk, like locks the door, walks over to his desk, and then masturbates so furiously that he covers his entire desk in cum. Like
he calendars. On like his like St. Augustine calendar or something.
He has to get rid of the month of October or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Oh, it made me so happy.
In fact, here's the line. My hands stilled and my breathing slowed and reality came crashing back down. Here I was, dick in hand, cum all over my liturgical desk calendar and a picture of St. Augustine looking at me reproachfully from the wall. Shit.
So good.
Like he's that overcome that he just like pulls his dick out and comes on the nearest object.
He had to do it. There was no other option. Oh, man. So she runs into him at a coffee shop a couple of days later, looks over his spreadsheets because he's, oh my God. And the wordplay here was just excellent.
Yeah.
But he's got these financial spreadsheets open because he's doing a church fundraiser. And she's like, what did you go to school for? Because I don't think they taught you a lot about spreadsheets. And he says, I spend a lot more time in the other kind of sheets. Like, oh my god.
And he's like, I don't know why I said that, but then it like has that effect on her. And yeah. When he quotes Seneca at her and she recognizes it, and it's like this banter about spreadsheets and Seneca, and it's like,
oh yeah,
tangling of wits. And
he's got a total nerd boner right now. Yeah. And I did too, frankly.
Yeah, totally.
It was so awesome. And then she vaguely references this past love, and he grabs her wrist to comfort her. And then he's like, I need to let go. Why aren't I letting go? This has gone too far. This is now awkward. And then he strokes the inside of her wrist, and neither of them know what to do with themselves, really. So he freaks out.
He's like, I'm going to break my vows in public in a coffee shop. Like, I came on my desk. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yep. We are not interested in other types of foam, Father Bell. So she asks if she can like walk him back to the church, because of course he finds out her house is on the same block as the rectory. She kisses his cheek goodbye, and it's really sweet. And then we jump to the Nutter Butters confession, as I like to call it.
Excellent.
Because wow. She goes into great detail about talking about the club and how it was carnal but lonely. And then he finally finds out the full story of Sterling. Sterling was her longtime boyfriend, first orgasm, first like everything, basically. And he broke up with her in order to marry like another blue-blooded
broke up
girl.
With her via wedding invitation.
Oh, fuck,
is like
you're right.
The worst thing I've ever heard. Like, she finds out that he has been cheating on her because a wedding invitation is sent to her parents' house to his wedding to another woman. Like, that is the level of douchebaggery that's happening here.
Yeah. He's a prize, this one. Poor Penelope. Poor fucking Penelope, as Poppy calls her throughout.
Yep.
So that's one of the reasons that she splits, basically. And he shows up at the club one day and buys a backroom dance. She comes out, is floored to see him, but then realizes, or he tells her, that he has sought her out. He has found her, and he wants to make her his mistress. And she's like, I knew he was an asshole. I knew that this was bad for me, but I also knew that I was really starved for any kind of actual affection, and I wanted it. And so I allowed him to fuck me in the back room. And that's really what it is too, is like, there's no prelude. There's no him worrying about her experience. There's nothing like that.
He just like pushes her face down into the bench and like does the deed. Well, and he says the most horrible, degrading things to her. Not sexy degrading, because again, there's a difference. And we get that just juxtaposition of like, he tells her that he didn't marry her because deep down she's always going to be a slut and he doesn't want that. And like, and not in like a dirty girl way. In like he legitimately means it and is a prick.
Actually, it says, oh God, well, first of all, she says, he asked me to come closer. It was a command, and Lord help me, I've always responded to commands, which, dig it, sets up some excellence in the rest of the book.
Yes.
But then he tells her that she was made for being a whore, not a wife. And there is a very big difference in Sterling's mind, because Madonna whore complex hurts everyone, Sterling, including you.
Yeah.
Like, now you're married to this person who he basically describes as frigid, and he doesn't love, and she doesn't love him. It's a true waspy business transaction, essentially. And now he still wants his quote unquote whore that he had in the first place.
Yeah. It's just no good for anyone.
It's really not.
Poor Penelope.
Yeah. God, I feel so bad for her. So we get out of the confession and they keep talking, and Father Bell is just like, I can't not touch myself through my trousers. Like, will she hear if I unzip my pants? Because I'm dying over here. And there's a there's a really beautiful conversation that really you should just read about what she feels ashamed of and like what she's working through and what she's emotionally processing. And then she starts talking about how even now, ... And she's like, I have to go. And so she goes to leave. He busts out.
Cracked the door and he
He busts out of his side of the confession booth and cages her in with his arms. She bites her lip in a way that shows that she is into it. And then he backs off to like give her one more chance to escape, because if she doesn't, he is just going to tackle her right now. And she does not. She's just like sort of coyly backing up toward the piano. Oh man. And then you guys, it is on.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord.
He tells her to turn around. So now he's basically got her bent over the piano in his office.
Oh yeah.
Or in the confessional room where the
area
is.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
All I can picture is vaulted ceilings and stained glass and this hot ass priest. And then he pushes her down and he sees that she didn't wear underwear. And he's like, did you not wear underwear for a specific purpose? And she's like, yes. And so he spanks her. Oh boy. And then he pulls her skirt up and lifts it all the way up. He kneels down to her ass because she's on the piano, and he whispers, my little lamb, you're so very, very wet right now. And then there is some from the rear oral action that is just wonderful. And this is such a good use. Brace yourselves, ladies, for the pearl clutching. Such a good use of the word cunt. Thank you. I actually, in my notes, I say she gets an honorary heaving bosoms. Thank you for using the word cunt well.
Yeah.
Because, oh my Lord. He says, I traced my way from her clit to her cunt with my tongue. Forgive me, my God, but no communion wine, no salvation had ever tasted sweeter than this. And one taste would not be enough.
Yeah.
Woo! I'm fanning myself right now.
And there's even the description a little bit later that he kneels behind her like he's praying to her cunt.
Yes.
And like he's determined to get her off. And it's, I have a fetish, I've realized, for romance novel heroes who go down on their heroine before they have kissed her.
Ooh, yeah.
It's very specific, but when it comes up, I'm like, fuck yes.
Yeah, totally.
Like he's so overcome with his need to pleasure her that he, like, all else just falls away, and he gets on his fucking knees and gets her off with his tongue, and it's like, it is a specific kind of hero, and I'm,
yeah, especially when he's kind of like beta feminist. I'm just like all over it. Just, he can come get it anytime he wants, frankly. Yeah. So he starts questioning himself throughout it. And I really liked this too, because we've read a couple, like, for the podcast where the dude starts questioning himself and like his behavior and then lashes out at the heroine. And in this case, he doesn't even stop. He's just like, this is my problem. This is not her problem. So I'm going to process this while also making sure she climaxes.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Well, he looks up and sees the crucifix. He's on his knees worshiping her cunt and looks up and sees the crucifix and is like, and it just brings it all crashing down. But yeah, exactly. He's like, I'm not going to leave her hanging. Like,
no.
Father
Bell would never.
No. I will work through this, but once she's had her orgasm.
And so then she's like, no one has ever gone down on Poppy before. And
I've just written wrong
like,
in my notes.
How could you possibly think about marrying Sterling if he had never once gone down on you? I don't understand.
I don't.
Oh no. Oh no. Especially when you're into it. Like, it's one thing if you have, if that's a limit for you.
Yeah.
But, oh, good Lord.
But if she didn't even know. Like,
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, my heart breaks.
It's so wrong.
I know. And he's like, that is a huge shame that no one has ever taken care of you before. But he says it makes him hard as fuck knowing that I was the first man to ever taste you.
Father Bell.
Father Bell! You're making the collar so hot. I didn't know that was a kink of mine, but I guess in certain situations. Oh boy.
So then he like he sort of is like, okay, now it's time for me to process this. And he tries to
he's
flee.
Ready to
he's
bounce.
like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. And she is like, no, don't you dare. Like, this is two-sided. I don't want that bullshit. She makes him stay. So he makes her get down on the floor and touch herself. Like,
yes. Yeah, she says she cops to the fact that she's been touching herself to him, like with the thought of him, and he says, "Show me," and she immediately drops to the floor.
And she this whole time she's been coming to confession, has been sitting in the booth next to him masturbating. Like,
I'm all about it. It's really just excellent. So then he gets down on top of her and he starts rocking his erection like onto her vulva and clit, and she's like, we don't have to have sex. If we don't have sex, then you're not actually breaking your vows. Which again,
bing,
everyone.
bing, bing. Lie number 1. This is the first lie they tell themselves. If it's not sex, it doesn't count. And wait, this scene is just like two people who want each other so fucking bad. And that translates to you as the reader. You're like, just do it. Like, but that they won't do it is so sexy. And like that in not doing it, they're not just focusing on penis ramming into vagina. It's like all the other sensual connection and clit and like what else the body can do and how that can get you off. And that's awesome.
Yeah, it so is, especially in a completely heterosexual romance. We don't get that a lot. It's really neat. And it's nice that it is pretty much external conflict. You know, it's not either of their hang-ups or anything like that. It's just like we're working around this huge thing that is a conflict. Okay, so she comes again just from like vulva clit action. And then she pitches him over, gets on top and starts riding him in the same way. And she's like, I have to see you come. It's such a huge turn on to see you come. I want to see it. And he thinks to himself that he wants to marry this woman or collar her or cage her. He wants to own her, make her, take her.
Oh, Sierra.
Sierra, you are just a queen. And then he does come and she runs her finger through it and puts it in her mouth, right? Like making eye contact with him. And then she leaves after saying sorry. And I was like, that was really conscientious. Poppy, thank you.
I love her. She's such a good heroine. She's just this like empowered, intelligent. I mean, she's the classic empowered submissive, right? She's not like so often in like things that are done poorly in BDSM fiction was something we said we would reference. And so often it's this like dominant male who is like exposing this innocent girl to the wonders of BDSM and submission. And she's learning that she likes to be submissive as he exposes her to it. And I love it when it's not that, when it's like she comes to the table knowing that she likes to be dominated and like, knowing that those commands turn her on and is cool with it. She's not struggling with like, oh, this is bad and I'm a naughty girl. She's like, fuck me harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are moments later on where he tries to apologize for this interaction because he's like, you came to me for help and I took advantage of you. And she's like, don't you dare.
Yeah.
I have agency. I made these choices. I wanted you. I still want you.
Yeah.
These are all of my very empowered choices. And I just loved it.
Yeah. And she recognizes that if he tries to take responsibility for that, he takes that power away from her.
Yes.
You know,
exactly.
Like as long as those were her choices, she has that agency and it's empowering. But if it's like, oh, I took advantage of you, then she becomes that woman that he's imagining who's a victim, and she's not at all.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, it's so good. Okay, so then this is where we meet Millie. Yeah.
I love her.
Me too. There are so many times with older side characters, I just want to be them. Millie's one of those people where she's a straight shooter and yet she always brings casserole. And I feel like that's a really good balance.
Yeah. Yep. She's got the food and she's down with technology. Like she's kind of turning that stereotype on its head. She's the one who, can do the spreadsheets and stuff for Father Bell.
Yeah, absolutely.
But she's too astute. She immediately recognizes that.
She does.
There's something up.
Yeah, she recognizes it without having ever actually met Poppy or seen them interact. She's just like, so I noticed that a sexy woman took over a house that's close by. How do you feel about that? And he's like, no, nothing. I have no feelings. I'm priest, celibate, all the things. And she's like, no, you 29-year-old guy. And then this is where we learn that one of his very first sermons to this absolutely raw and beaten parish is that Catholics should celebrate consensual godly sex because he is the ultimate priest, bae. And he's so sex positive for being, like, especially as a man of the cloth. And their conversations ends basically with her being like, hey, if you have a crush, that's natural. Bye.
And he's like, crush, but also we had not sex on the floor.
Yeah, we almost broke my vows. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
You're still celibate, don't worry. But this is one of those scenes where, and there's so many of them, you appreciate just how frustrating it is that vow of celibacy is still part of the priesthood. Where it's like, guys, fucking move past it. Like, he has so much potential to do good in his community as a spiritual leader. And you see that. And it just makes you realize, like, how many great priests we could have, but they're not going to be celibate. They want sex and love and marriage and children.
Well, and especially since Father Bell could have all of these things if he just weren't Catholic. Like, all of the other religions are cool with having a wife and family, or a husband and family in some cases. Okay, so he feels terrible. He's running. He's repenting. He's taking it out on his sexy, sexy abs. And a few days later, Poppy comes back to morning mass. And they speak afterwards. She wants to help with the pancake breakfast, everybody. She wants to get involved.
She's nice.
She is. She's nice and kind and giving. So after the breakfast, they do the breakfast thing and they speak. And it turns into this really fraught conversation, partially because Sterling has found her again, called her, left a voicemail that was like, I want you to be my whore, basically. So she takes it out on him by essentially being like, can I be good and still be a woman? Are you sure that you don't think I'm a fallen woman and I'm not capable of goodness or kindness or whatever because I'm a woman? And his internal monologue is like, I was one class short of a women's studies minor, madam.
I loved that. Yeah.
Me too. But because he's the best, he doesn't say that out loud. He just recognizes the ways in which he has made her feel shitty accidentally and apologizes for it. And then she's like, well, okay, fine, and leaves. Which, of course, leads her to feel terrible in the middle of the night and grab a handy bottle of scotch and just head over in the rain in her pajamas.
Conveniently shows up on his doorstep in the middle of the night, soaking wet in her PJs with a bottle of Macallan 12.
That's right. And, the PJs are not only a Walking Dead t-shirt, which, let's recall, is his favorite show, but she also sort of forgot to put on a bra.
Oops.
Oh, noes. And so he's like, he can't handle himself. And he says, I hadn't seen her breasts yet, and they were more tempting than ever under that wet t-shirt. Fuck, I didn't mean yet.
Okay, and then we get, be good, be good, be good, I told myself as I approached her. Don't jump her bones. Don't fantasize about fucking her tits. Be a good priest.
Everything about it is delightful. So they sit by the fire and drink scotch. She apologizes for her earlier outburst and everything, and she's like, She explains her feeling really complicated because she still can't stop thinking about him, even though she knows she can't have him. And this is where we have the conversation about him taking advantage of her and her being like, absolutely not. You will not take away my agency. These are all my choices. And she says that she won't bother him again with her body, stands up and goes to leave. And he grabs her arm, you guys, and pulls her right back between his legs. And then he just goes straight for the nipple through the Walking Dead shirt, which has to be a particular fantasy of his,
Yeah.
Like just fantasies enacted all over the place. It's great.
All right, we've got a naughty quote. Can I read the naughty quote?
Yeah.
All right. So then he says, I shouldn't put you over my lap and spank your ass for being a brazen little slut and coming here without a bra, I growled in her ear. I shouldn't twist ropes around your wrists and ankles until your cunt is exposed and then screw you until you can't walk anymore. I shouldn't flip you over and fuck your ass until your eyes water. I shouldn't drive you down to the strip club and fuck you in the back room so that you'll forget all about Sterling and the only name you'll remember to say is mine. I lightly bit her nipple again, or God's.
Father Bell. His dirty talk is so on point.
It is extraordinary.
It really, really is.
So then we get bing, 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 lie number 2. Just tonight. We'll never do it again.
Just give me tonight. And she's like, yeah, absolutely. Anytime. I've cleared my calendar. It's great. So he gets all commanding. He instructs her in exactly the ways she should go down on him. She is more than happy to acquiesce. And then he tells her to go take off her shirt and get up on the counter because he has to feel her. If this is going to be the only night, he has to feel at least a tiny portion of her pussy. So he gets her up on the counter. Her shirt is off. She's all about it. And then he's like, they start to kiss and she won't give in.
She's like not kissing him back.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, if I didn't have all of the experience I got in college, I wouldn't know what's going on. But because I do, he goes through this awesome example of getting consent to be rough while still being super, super hot.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh, you're a bad girl and you like you want me to take it from you, don't you? You want me to force you into it. And she's like, Yeah. Do it. Yeah. And then they kiss for the first time. This is their first kiss. It's so great. So then this is where we get the awesome just the tip action.
Yeah. We play a game of just the tip, or as Father Bell says, 1.5 inches of damnation. And all I could think about was sinking deeper into hell.
Oh, boy. So they both come, and he's like, it's such a huge turn on that I can get her off with just this tiny portion of my penis. Like, there's...
Imagine the wonders of the whole thing.
Oh, my gosh. And then... I was expecting her to like reach down and stroke the exposed portions of his penis, but she doesn't even have to do that. He is so stoked about like being inside a woman for the first time in 3 years that she leans back, touches herself, and just the tiny contractions around the head of his dick gets it going. And it's fabulous. So when it's over, he walks her to the door and then they kiss really sweetly goodbye. And she says that they're going to start tomorrow fresh, clean, and chaste.
Of course.
I did not believe them.
Yeah.
Because third lie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
She's a dirty, dirty liar. And this is, I made another note that I think this is another one of my fetishes when two people's kinks just align so beautifully and they're honest about them.
Yes.
So it's like she wants it rough and he wants to give it to her that way. And it's that perfect example of like he can say degrading things and it's sexy because it's what she wants and it's like that moment for them, but he doesn't mean it. Like, he would marry her if he could. You know, he doesn't mean you're a dirty slut and I don't want to marry you. He means like you're a dirty slut and I like it. And
we're both into it.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. That they're just they're forthright about their desires. And I like that. There's no having to tease it out. He's like, do you want this? And she's like, yeah. Instead of being like, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe we can try it. Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing to be in sync, but it's another thing to be communicative about that as well. Okay, so we move on. He and Poppy and Millie have lunch together. And it was Poppy's idea because she has awesome ideas for the church fundraisers. She's super smart. It's really exciting. Great scene. And then afterwards, she asks him if he can help her pray. because she's trying to figure out this religion thing and she kind of feels like an idiot when she tries to pray. So later that night, he tells her that they're going to meet up in the sanctuary after all of the Bible groups and stuff. So it's at night. She's standing in these hallowed halls of God.
With the light hitting her just so.
The light filtering through and the tortured crucifix on the wall, and just everybody feels vulnerable. There's something that can be very sexy about feeling small. And I feel like that's one of the things that a sanctuary can evoke in a person. I don't know. It's just this extra layer of vulnerability, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he finds her already there. And he's like, oh, God is here. She's having a moment with God. She's softly crying. And he walks up to her and he says that he does the only thing that feels natural, which is to put his arms around her. And she leans back into him. And it is this really gorgeous scene where actually, here's the perfect quote. He says that he's wondering if this might be more than friendship and lust. And then he says, sacred and profane were blending and blurring together, fusing and welding themselves into something new and whole and singular. And if this is what love was, then I didn't know how anyone could bear the weight of it. And then they kiss in this really intimate, amazing way. And the kiss goes on. The kiss is excellent. And he walks her home. And then don't worry, guys. We get an excellent finger banging.
Yeah. He's not going to leave her unsatisfied.
No. So he's like, we should see each other soon. And she says, the earliest I can do is Thursday, which I loved.
Well, no, wait, doesn't she say, like, come on in? And he's like, no.
Oh.
It's late. I need time for what I have planned. Like,
yeah.
So she's like, all right, I can pencil you in on Thursday.
Right. It's the best. And then he's like, well, Thursday's a really long way away. So he turns her around against the garden fence and he gives her an excellent orgasm while talking about how hard it makes him to think about being inside of her. Because that's what's going to happen on Thursday, you guys.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
He is a generous man with the orgasms.
He really is. The best kind. And then he realizes in mass the next morning, it like hits him like a ton of bricks that he is fully falling in love with Poppy Danforth. And
I like that he's honest about that. Again, like there isn't this sort of dwelling angsty, like, am I or aren't I? He's like, no, I am.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier. All of the guilt and the hand wringing is done in all the right places. Mm-hmm. It never made me pissed off because I'm just like, yeah, all of these are totally reasonable concerns. But he's not being like, no, I'm not in love with Poppy Danforth. I
can't be because that's against my vows. He's like, well, fuck, I'm in love with her. What do I do? Like, here's what's at stake. It's in a very sensible, like, he's evaluating what's going on, but is being honest about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So then it's Thursday. It has been too long. He
can't make it.
He can't make it. And so he gives her a little call on the cell phone. She realizes that he is touching himself while talking to her. And so she slips off into a room in the club to do the same. So we've even got some phone sex in a not long distance
sexy
book.
Phone sex. Like in real life, phone sex usually doesn't go like this. It's like giggling and awkwardness and like, but they make phone sex sexy. They're like sending pictures at the same time, which is just impressive.
Yeah. How many hands do they have? Really? I don't know. So then she's like, I'm home.
Oh, here it comes.
Oh, here it comes, you guys. He's like, meet me. I can't have somebody seeing you come to the rectory itself at this time of night. So meet me in the church, everyone.
Because that makes way more sense.
Obviously. Yeah. Late night prayers. Fine. So she knocks on the door of the front of the church. I'm just imagining these like 25-foot tall doors. I'm sure it's not like that.
Right. It's some like tiny, like rinky-dink church in Kansas or something. Yeah. And we're imagining like a cathedral. But let us have it, damn it.
Yes. So he pulls her in, throws her up against the door, and just starts going to town kissing her. And then he realizes that once again, she's not wearing underwear. Because she got a little messy earlier. Mm-hmm. It's understandable with all the phone sex.
She had to take them off.
Yeah. And so he takes her up and he asks her permission if he can be rough and possessive, which I really liked. He's like, this is the way I want to be with you. can I be that way? And she's like, 1,000 times yes. Like, I can't be more clear about the fact that I am co-signing on this endeavor. So he takes her up to the front and he puts her over the altar. He says he wanted to take her to his office, but he can't make it
the minutes that it would take to get there. Like,
no, that's too far.
An ejaculate on your calendar kind of situation. Like, there's no time.
Oh, it's so good. So he ties her up on the altar, right?
Using, and I don't even know how to pronounce the rope, sacred ropey thing.
Cincture.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the cincture that goes around his waist, which symbolizes celibacy and self-denial. And I loved that juxtaposition so much.
So he ties her up and spanks her.
Yeah, because he says that while, obviously her genitalia is her own, he's taking it tonight and making it his. So being underwearless in such a short dress is something that he takes issue with. Mm-hmm. Oh, man. It works.
Yes. Yeah. And then he fucks her on the altar, as we have been promised since the prologue. She delivers.
Absolutely. And I really did like that he turned her around. At first, it starts with like her in, he could jump right into doggy. But he's just like, no, I'm going to be fully naked. Oh, Father Bell likes to be kind of clothed because he likes the power dynamic of having a super naked lady and having his body mostly covered. And this time he's like, fuck, I'm breaking my vows for the first time in 3 years. I'm going to experience everything.
I think he actually says, I'm going to gift her with my nakedness. And I was yeah, give it to her. Let her see those abs.
Mm-hmm. I'll put it on my Christmas list, frankly. Yeah. So they have sex on the altar in the sanctuary. And the whole time he's still calling her lamb. That's his favorite go-to nickname for her. He says that she's a bad lamb at some points. Man.
And side note, if you want to join Sierra Simone's cult following, they refer to themselves as the Lambs. So the Facebook group is Sierra Simone's Lambs.
Oh, yep. I'm writing that down right now. Simone's Lambs. Because that is one I am not a part of yet, and I will remedy that immediately.
Yes.
So yeah, really, really, really good sex scene. There's one part of this sex scene that I have to read. Right toward the end, he says, excruciatingly, I came. Every pulse of my dick was like a pulse of the soul, and every muscle tightening and contracting was like a punch to the gut. And I was so bare with this woman in every way, my nerves flayed raw and my heart wide open, and my eternal soul right alongside my bruising hips and thrusting dick and the cum that was now spilling everywhere, leaking onto the white altar cloth. And yes, this is why the church wanted marriage and sex to go hand in hand, because I felt as married to her right now as a man could be married to a woman. And this is what is so amazing about this book, is that it takes the sacred and the profane, it meshes them together, and then it elevates it to this level that is just astounding.
Yeah.
And at the start, I think there's a warning near the dedication that's like, there is sacrilege.
Yeah.
There is blasphemy. Get ready, because this is all going to happen. And boy.
Yeah. So Sierra makes the point that I was Catholic for a long time. I'm not Catholic anymore. I didn't set out to write this to be sacrilegious. I'm not being taboo for the sake of being taboo.
Right.
But you're almost catching this glimpse of how she views spirituality and how it goes beyond those rules, and how this love and passion and sex between two people who love each other that much is sacred, and has that level of power as a religious experience.
Absolutely.
And it's just it hits you so hard when you're reading it, and it takes you on this emotional roller coaster, because you're I'm so turned on, but fuck, that's powerful. And it just, you're muddled and into it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It takes it to a level that is just amazing. Because I think it elevates not only the sex, but it also elevates the romance. It's very cool. Yeah. So then afterward, he's always cleaning her up.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it so much. He's always just
considerate.
Oh, yeah.
Let me deal with my mess. And she's no, let me eat it.
Yeah, exactly. It's so
not here, guys. She doesn't do it here.
Yeah,
she
not
doesn't
this
kill
time.
the moment, but yeah.
Not this time. But yeah, he cleans her up, and then they go back to, I think his house, her house. They go back to somebody's house, and they connect in a way that is just beautiful.
Yeah. So he, I think, reveals. She comments on how it's his house because she comments on how clean it is, and you don't. It's those innocuous comments sometimes with people where like you're like, oh, you're so clean, ha ha ha, and then it's like, I'm clean because the garage was really dirty when my sister killed herself, and I got dirty and I touched her face when I was trying to take her down, and there were oil smears, and my mother was upset about it, and when they took her body away, there was still dirt from my hands, and now I just have this, and it's like, fuck. Like, if you're the person who's made that comment, you're like, oh, I didn't know what nerve I was touching on. It's, there's, I think when you've been hit by that kind of tragedy, there's like landmines everywhere.
Yeah.
And no one knows when they're going to, like, and it's not their fault, and you would never hold it against them, but you just hit on stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So they talk a lot about that. They both open up to each other about their own sort of baggage. And so they connect there. And
this is the like body and soul. Like this is where it's going beyond. It's not just lust. It's not just passion. They really connect on like an academic level. But this is that like deep emotional connection. They're being as raw and vulnerable with each other as two people can be. In every way that it's possible to be. And it's like she checks all of those boxes for you.
Yeah, definitely. And this is also where we find out that the reason his love of Brittany comes from his sister. She was always sort of rickrolling them with Brittany when she would drive their cars. And right after, like on the way to the funeral, they drove his brother's car for the first time. And so they're going to mourn their sister, turn on the car, and Brittany just starts blasting out of the radio. And I have moments like that in my own life, in my own mourning. And it's sort of this transcendent experience that I love the way that he owns it throughout the rest of his life. He sort of celebrates it and uses it as a motivation just as much as he uses her death as a motivation for his career path and his overall, passion for religion. Yeah. So, and then she also talks about Sterling a bit. Yeah. And one of my favorite quotes is that it didn't work out with Sterling because he can't differentiate between the two, the bedroom and real life.
Yeah. She understands it. Like, at least she gets it. And again, she doesn't internalize Sterling's bullshit as much as she could have. She could have been like, I'm a dirty slut and this is all I'm good for. So that's what I'm going to do with my life. And, like, I'm not worthy I'm not worth this kind of healthy love. And instead she rejects it and is like, no, I see that bullshit for what it is. I am better than this. Like, fuck you.
Yeah.
And that makes me love her even more.
Same.
Because it had to hit home. Like, she's not above it. She can't possibly have heard those things from someone that she loved and was her first everything.
Yeah.
And just walked away unscathed. But she is strong enough to be like, oh, this hurts, but
this hurts, but it's not going to define me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm not going to accept his ascribed definitions of me. That fuckhole. Ugh.
So they bear body and soul, and then they have the what are we doing moment that has been coming. Like, we acknowledge this for what it is, but what the fuck are we doing? Like, how does this have a happy ending?
Well, and they basically come to the conclusion that they don't know what they're doing, but they also don't want to stop. And that's where we spend a good, like, next third of the book, I'd say.
Yeah.
Is just like them living everyday life, trying to be the people they're supposed to be in public, but then spending every night in one or the other's bed.
And you could see where you would fall into that of like, yeah, you could get away with this. Like, we're going to secretly have this relationship. I'm still going to be this upstanding figure in the community. She's going to have her thing going on. Everything's going to be fine, right? Like, we can just do this indefinitely and never have to actually deal with it. So yeah, you're right. There is the next number of chapters. There's that, but there's also...
Yeah, tell me.
Well, so we go back to confession.
Yes.
And she confesses this time things about him. So she's like basically dirty talking her confessions of like what he makes her feel and, touching herself and how she's been touching herself thinking about him since she saw the picture of him on the internet. And now we get butt sex.
Yeah, we do.
We get to, let me put it in your ass, Poppy.
Yeah.
I want to fuck you there. And she goes, oh God, yes, please.
Yeah. And then she's like, I will say that I'm a little nervous because I've never done this with anyone as big as you before.
Which, what man doesn't want to hear that?
First of all, that's yes. But then second of all, that's also a very real concern.
Yeah.
You should definitely tell your partners that.
Yeah. So I have this very complicated relationship with butt sex. And so I think it's like the hottest thing ever to read about it. I write about it all the time. I write erotica for Penthouse. So butt sex features prominently in that erotica. I have not ever had full-blown butt sex.
Interesting.
I am an anal virgin because I don't know. I like the idea of it, but a dick in the ass is just like too much for me. It hurts and I can't handle it and I'm like not here for it. So my role with my partners was always I would let them fuck me in the ass when they took a comparably sized dildo in the ass first.
I think that's perfectly fair, honestly.
You can do this if you can take it and you're cool with it and like you know what it feels like when you're doing it. Like if that's what you want me to take, you're going to take it first. And somehow I'm still an anal virgin.
Very, very interesting.
And I think it's a good rule. It's like you should have that empathy of like some people are really into it and like I have fucked many people in the ass. Like I've been on the other end of it and like people love it, but you should know what it feels like and there's no reason that you can't. Like don't give me that it's gay bullshit. Like
no, we don't like homophobes up in here.
Yeah.
And frankly, like the male prostate is a very pleasurable thing to mess with. Yeah. So, you know, it could work out really well. I think the problem with anal, as far as like the population at large is concerned, is that people treat it like they would vaginal sex 30 sessions in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when a woman is like working through the first stages of having vaginal sex for the first time, there's a lot of times when people don't come for like 12 times or whatever it is. And it always hurts the first time. And we forget about that stage in our lives. And then when you compound that with the fact that anal sex needs to be treated that way every time, no matter how many times you've had it, and like you should start really slow, you should start with small things, you should start with a lot of lube. It is a process and people want the porn experience.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Men see like, oh, you've done it before. This porn star has done it before. Yeah. And they don't see the warm up that goes into the porn star.
Right.
Like what's happening off camera. She's not just bending over and taking it. Like there's a whole process and lots of lube that you're not seeing and lube that you are seeing. And
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a whole staff of fluffers that have been helping out like before they hit record, you guys. It's not, you can't go from 0 to full dick in the ass.
Yeah.
You can't do it. It's rude. It's hurtful. It's not okay.
So Father Bell knows this. He knows that he needs lube, but he's not prepared. He didn't plan
in his
for
office,
it.
You guys.
Like, what's he going to do? He even says there's no time to think the logistics through or to consider relocating to a more prepared place. What is a priest to do when he wants to fuck someone in the ass and is not prepared?
Well, I think there might be a whole cabinet of holy oils.
You're right. Sometimes they need to bless things with holy oil.
They do.
So he's got some lube on hand.
So he's like, hold that thought. I'll be right back. He takes a little walk down the corridor to the cabinet of sacred oils and brings back exactly what they need. And she is so blessed.
Yeah. I think he explains like it's the oil that they use if there's like a new part of the church that they're building or like they use it to sanctify a space. So her ass is getting blessed, guys. And there's another moment that I love where like he's come back with the oil. She's like on all fours. She's going to take it in the ass. And he goes to take his collar off. And she's like, leave it on.
Yep. And he goes, my dick surged, dirty girl.
And like, if you're gonna get fucked in the ass by a hot priest in his office with the holy oil, like, yeah, you want him to leave his collar on. Like, why would he even think about taking it off? He's gonna kill the fantasy.
He is. Absolutely. Yeah. Don't even think about it, Father Bell. And he says, I'm anointing you now, I informed her. I'm sanctifying you from the inside out. Do you feel that? That's my finger fucking your ass. And in just a minute, it'll be my cock. It'll be my cock consecrating you. No, don't touch yourself, sweetheart. We're going to get there together. It is.
And he somehow
just astounding.
Manages to say things like this. And it's hot and you take it seriously. Like if you out of context say the like, I'm sanctifying you from the inside out, you would be like, that's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
But when he does it, you're like, yeah, yeah, you are.
Yeah, all of my antennas go up.
Ladywood.
Man, it is great. And then, and then I love that she turns the tables at the very end because he pulls out of her to come on her back. And then right afterwards, she says, clean me up, she commanded, like the little queen she was. And I rushed to obey.
And that, another perfect example of like, he is a dom in the ways that a male dom should be. And in so many ways, a male dom or a female dom, it is like they are serving the submissive. They're doing these things because it pleases the sub. Right. And in that way, the power dynamic is skewed. And people who don't have any exposure to BDSM so often misunderstand that. In fact, I got called out on that on TV once in a TV interview on The Doctors.
Really?
One of the doctory people whose names I don't know and should was like, oh, but isn't this wrong? The power dynamic is all in favor of the dominant. And I had to be like, no, it's not at all. Like you've just exposed yourself as being totally ignorant because it's not. You are serving your submissive. And in doing so, like they have a sort of mastery over you.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Father Bell is classic that. Like he's such a great example.
Yeah, absolutely. And good BDSM, at least when you start, is scripted. You go through exactly what each of you is intending to do, right? And you like set the scene and you negotiate limits before, or like you negotiate preferences and stuff like that so that you can maintain a safe space.
Yeah.
All right.
So he's fucked her in all the holes now.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, he has.
She is sanctified. They are kind of just trying to live the lie. And there's this moment where he's got his sister's rosary.
Yeah.
And like, that's the rosary that he uses. And he has this realization that like she and her death are this driving force in his life and this weight that he carries around. And he's always trying to kind of avenge that wrong, I think is how he puts it. Like his life is constructed around this weird kind of vengeance where like he's going to right that wrong. And he realizes that maybe there's something more powerful there in that, like, what if he chose love instead?
Yeah.
And he even says, like, wasn't that what Christians were called to do after all? Choose love above all else. Mm-hmm. And he says, love, the word was a bomb, an unexploded bomb living inside my chest. And so he texts Poppy and he wants to give her the rosary. Mm-hmm. And that, like, he feels so strongly for this woman that he wants to give her this symbol of his sister. And it's what he prays with. And it just, there's so much power there.
Yeah.
And so much symbolism. And she's wrapping in these layers of religion. And it's really beautiful.
Yeah. It makes me cry just thinking about it, honestly. And even then, even though he's going over there to do this monumental thing, the whole scene starts out with them being really cute with each other and her being like, jeans and a t-shirt, you're a person.
Yeah.
And, they talk about whether or not they're dating and like all of the weird questions that are awkward sometimes just on the regular. But then when you add the collar to it, it's like, I don't know how to navigate this. And it's just wonderful. So, yeah, he gives her he walks through her house and he's just loving her mind, looking at her books and all the various things she has all over her house. And then gives her the the rosary. And doesn't she say at first that she can't accept it because it's too much?
Yeah.
And they joke about her dancing for him.
Yeah.
And I love that there was an excellent plant for what is to come.
Yeah. So the end of that chapter is like he is just totally smitten. And you get like, this is love, I thought, dizzily, wondrously. This is what laying down a cross feels like. This is what taking up a new life feels like. It feels like Poppy Danforth. And he says the final words of the rosary, and he says, I almost forgot whom I was praying to. Hail, Holy Queen, our sweetness and our hope. God damn it, Sierra.
Oh, it is so, so good. So then he's like, all right, I still need to be a priest, though. So I'm going to go and I'm going to confess, because that is what I have been taught is the next thing you do. So he goes down to his usual confessor, the guy who was his roommate in seminary school. And he's one of these like ultra holy dudes who just lives on a different plane of existence, and he's incredibly insightful, and I don't know, he seems like a mythical creature to me, but I'm into it.
So I read Priest first, and then I knew that Sinner was the next book, and I desperately wanted it to be about Jordan.
No,
I was like, I need this again, and I need to see like what brings him to his knees. And it's not what happens, but he is this really interesting character. Again, with the really good side characters.
Yeah, really, really good side characters. But he refuses to accept this guy's confession. He's just like, no, I'm not going to hear a confession. And Father Bell's like, what the fuck, dude? I thought we were pals. And he's like, I will hear your confession when you are actually repentant and you're going to stop, because I can see all over your face right now that you are not prepared to stop. And Father Bell's like, well, God damn it, you're not wrong. It is so excellent. So he's like, all right, well, I definitely am not. And then the next chapter opens with, a week later, I stared up at Poppy's ceiling.
Yeah. And they're like trying to just live the lie. Mm-hmm. But it comes to a head, and she's like, I don't know how long I can do this for. Like, this isn't going to work forever. Like, what are we doing?
Well, and she feels terrible because she knows how good he is at his vocation, and she knows how passionate he is about it. And you can see, like, even though none of it is from her perspective, I still felt the layers of guilt and responsibility that she feels just through their dialogue. And that's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, the writing in this is so, so good.
When she recognizes what's at stake, too. She's not assuming that what they have takes precedence over his religious life. And she makes that distinction. Like, she says, even if I made you, I could never hate you, is what he says. And she says, even if I made you choose between me and your God. And he's like, fuck. Like, when you put it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So then
Millie busts them.
You're so right. He's sneaking out of her little cabinsies one morning and making his early morning trek from her house back to the rectory. And I love Millie too, because she's just like, she's already sitting in his living room. And so it's that classic,
like a mob boss. Yeah.
She's just a geriatric gargoyle sitting on his couch. And he's like, what's going on? Just for a run. I was doing things that are not with my penis. And she's like, so I know that you don't know this about me because you are a person who sleeps in. I am not a person who sleeps in. I take a walk every morning. Did you know that, Father Bell? I've been walking around here quite a bit lately in the morning, Father Bell. And I've seen quite a few little excursions that can only be explained by sexy times. He's basically like, don't tell the bishop, right? Like, please don't tell the bishop.
Yeah. When he's like, well, be careful. He's like, I'm so ashamed, but like, we've been careful. And she's like, careful. Like, you can say that. And then she explains, like, there's a reason I came to you instead of just running and tattling on the bishop. Yeah. And she says, like, this town needs you and it doesn't need another scandal. And you're going to rip open all these old wounds. And like, what are you doing, bro?
Right. Well, and Millie, I love the fact that she is direct and harsh, but she's also very loving. And she's also like, I don't necessarily think what you are doing is wrong.
Right.
I just think that you need to clean up whatever circumstances in your life to make it okay if this is something that you want.
Right. Yeah. She's like, choose. You can't have both. Like,
yeah,
I can't
absolutely
make the decision for you. I'm, but like this like fantasy land you're living in doesn't exist.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we are at Mass. There's a dude who walks in who is a tiny bit shorter than Tyler, but like also in really good shape and in very expensive suit. And he seems like there's a little bit of a molecular connection between them where he's like, I don't think this is good. And guys, it's Sterling.
Yeah.
Sterling has come to town.
Dun, dun, dun.
And Sterling hands over a manila envelope that is appropriately ominous. Tyler opens it up and it's thank goodness it's not like a picture of them fully boning. It's just a picture of him like kissing her neck or something like that. And he has obviously had a private investigator following Poppy. And I love that Tyler's first response is not like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. It's like, hold on, you've been stalking Poppy?
Yeah.
Because that's not an okay move, bro.
Yeah.
And Sterling can't see he can't see the distinction there and why it would not be okay. And so Sterling's basically like, leave her alone so that she'll come be my mistress or I out you. And Tyler is not impressed. So Tyler goes in, Tyler now, he's no longer Father Bell to us. He is firmly Tyler.
Yes.
He starts going through this. I mean, he's freaking out. He's panicking.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
Millie knowing is one thing. Sterling having photographic evidence and an agenda is another thing entirely.
Absolutely. So he spends a lot of time pacing, doing all of this. This was a moment where I was like, my natural inclination would be to call my co-conspirator or text my co-conspirator and be like, fuck, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
And that is not his response.
No.
He's just like quietly stewing. It was something I could not identify with.
It was very priestly or like monkish where like he internalizes where, yeah, exactly. I would be like, fuck. I need to talk to you right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So then when he finally does text her, he gets no response whatsoever. And he's just like, this is weird. She always responds. Like, we're really good about this with each other. And then he thinks to himself, oh, of course, Sterling would have gone from me to her. It's not a long walk. Like, why didn't I think of that? So she's not responding. And then later on in the night, he gets a text from Sterling that is a picture of her in the back of like a town car or a limo or something fancy. And Tyler basically thinks that she has accepted at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes into an extra layer of tailspin. He's always talking about his Irish roots and how there's God and then there's being Irish.
Totally.
And so he starts just mainlining whiskey and pumping iron because why wouldn't he, frankly?
What else is a panicking priest to do?
Great idea, Father Bell.
Yeah. I love, side note, he is drinking Macallan 12 is like a thing in this book. That's what she brings over when she's dripping wet and whatever. And I hung out with Sierra in Denver and she ordered Macallan 12 at the bar. And I was like, yes, like, I don't like your taste in whiskey, but this feels very authentic right now. Like,
absolutely.
It was the right experience.
Yeah, I can't join you, but I will admire.
Yeah.
He does this like essentially all night. He barely sleeps. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think he's like, he basically passes out. Like he drinks, I think he says 4 fingers of Macallan 12 and goes to bed. Like he just wears himself out in every way he can and passes the fuck out and wakes up and she still hasn't called or texted.
Right. Anyway, she shows up
wearing the same clothes that she was wearing in the picture that he got. From the night before. From the night before.
And he's like, oh man, he's been doing drunk push-ups. I tried to do drunk yoga one time. I got drunk and I was younger and I was like, man, you know what? It sounds like the best thing in the world. Like, will just heighten my experience is like some yogas. Oh man, did I fall all the way over?
Yeah.
Just immediately.
I don't know if it's
idea.
a man thing. I had an ex-boyfriend who loved to get either drunk or high and like go run marathons, or like he did like crazy exercise. Like he would get drunk and go do a triathlon. And I was like, you are a crazy person. So maybe it's a man thing, that because that's not going to work for me.
No, there's nothing I want to do less than work out, frankly, when I'm drunk. Okay, so she shows up and she immediately is just like, oh my God, like you're not okay. What's going on? And she pulls his sweaty face to her and starts kissing her. And he says, the moment her lips touched me, everything flared up and burned away. Like so much flash paper thrown into the air. And so it starts really sweet. And then all of a sudden he remembers the feeling of betrayal that he's been battling with, because not only was she with Sterling, but he got no explanation whatsoever. And he doesn't know what's been going on, but he's been trying not to think the worst, and really like wants to give into this urge to punish her, like give her a punishment fuck. And he's just about to do that. And then he almost does something that's worse, which is completely pull back. Yeah, because he says, my jealousy and perhaps my conscience, which was beaten and gagged, but still not ready to let me fuck a woman drunk and in anger. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. And he's like, it was a dick move to stop, but it was even worse to touch her with the kind of feelings I had inside me. Like he knows that this is not the right headspace to be doing these things.
Yeah. But he still can't help it. And she says like, because he pulls back and he starts jacking off. And she's like, don't do this, Tyler. Like, I want you to fuck me. And he's like, turn around. You're going to be my sex object right now. And so she does. And oh man, he battles himself. He's like, McKellen Tyler thought, yeah. Well, boo fucking who, McKellen Tyler thought. And good guy Tyler winced. But no, she would atone somehow. So then basically she's just like, you're seriously in a place. After all that's done, she puts him in the shower and then she puts him to bed. And she's like, we will talk when you're better. Like, go the fuck to sleep. And tucks him in. He does. And then when he wakes up, she is in a different outfit because and I love this because he's like, you left. How could you leave?
Yeah, you left me.
And she gets all bossy. It's so good.
Yeah, she calls him on his bullshit. Because he's like, I feel like shit. And she's like, because of the booze or because of the way you acted?
Yeah, it's excellent. And then
she wants to take him somewhere.
Yeah, she wants to go on a date. So she's like, it's not going to be fancy. Just like, let's go. And then she takes him down to the club. He gets to see the infamous strip club. She takes him into a back room because her boss, she still works for the club as like behind the scenes from home. She's like their money manager and everything. Because he realized that one of his employees already had an MBA and he's a very smart businessman. So he transitioned her.
You have more value to me here.
Yeah. So, and she wanted to get out of the strip club anyway. So it was like perfect for both of them. So she takes him back and she takes him to a back room and she comes out in all of her stripper finery. She's got, translucent bras and panties on. She's got this blue wig on that she references wearing when Sterling came to the club. And I really liked that too.
Yeah.
I was really glad that it didn't squeak him out. And then she's like, I want to play a game. And she hands him literally thousands of dollars. She's like, tonight, you're the client. I'm the dancer. Let's do this. And there is this fabulous scene where he pays for different acts. And he's like, well, I know that I'm not supposed to touch you. And she's like, well, you could pay for it. And then he's like, I know that you're not supposed to touch me and you certainly aren't supposed to go down on me. And she goes, well, if you have some more money. And it gets real. It gets real good. And there's this gorgeous moment at the end where he is still battling himself because he realizes that he's still not emotionally prepared to be kind or gentle or anything. And he's really worried about her and her reaction. And she takes the reins and she's like, Tyler, I brought you here in order to have this catharsis. I want you to punish me. I am giving you permission to act out those feelings in a really safe way so that we can move past it. Like, I know that even though you're a wonderful man and you're a priest and you're a feminist, there is still a part of you that needs to reclaim me. So why don't we do that? And
it's hot. Like, handled the wrong way, that would just be like, ugh,
yes.
Yuck. Like, no, that's not okay. But this way it is. It's like she's giving him power, but in doing so, taking her own power. And it's...
Yes.
Ugh.
Well, and especially since through his inner monologue, you see how much respect he has for her overall. He's like, here I was thinking I needed to protect this woman from me. And yet she had the emotional control all the time. Like she was taking care of me and I should allow that. Like, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Jesus, it's so fucking gorgeous.
Yeah. And then it's hot. Like,
and
when he does, like, go for it and is, like, making her pick up money with her mouth, but makes her take her panties off first. And
he's got her on a leash that used to be a scarf. Like, it is excellent work. And that is, like, that's the way they get over that hurdle. After all of that, he basically comes to the conclusion that he's going to choose Poppy. And there's this moment in a sermon. He had this whole sermon prepared that was on, like, I don't know, I think it was like the vices of the flesh or something very Catholic, very traditionally Catholic, I should say. And he throws it all out and he's like, I want us to choose love, I think is the basis of his sermon.
Yeah, exactly.
And his whole plan is to immediately call his bishop and resign right afterwards. So Poppy's in the hall, she's hearing this sermon and she's actually got like kind of this panicked, worried look on her face throughout, like this very sort of concerned look because she can't parse what he's saying. And I loved that because I didn't understand it at first. And then later on, it's just the most beautiful plant. So yeah, he tries to find her after mass and it doesn't work.
Well, he wants to propose.
Yeah.
And he's worried because he doesn't have a ring. Is this like thing that he's getting really worked up about? And that like, he doesn't have a ring and he's worried, but he knows that she's going to think it's funny that he's worried and doesn't have a ring. And
well, wait. And right before that, he does call his bishop and he's like, I have to, he didn't get a hold of him. So he leaves a voicemail quitting.
Yeah.
Resigning completely. And then he's walking over to Poppy's house without the ring. What does he bring instead? Flowers. It's so sweet.
Yeah. He picks them himself.
Quit his job. He gets some wildflowers for her and he's going to go propose, but something seems a little off. Something's not quite right.
He like goes into the house.
Yeah. He lets himself into the house and he can't, like, everything seems really silent as if she's not there, but there's still this weird, like, this disruption of energy in the air. And he makes it all the way back to her bedroom when he hears a man's voice and then realizes that it is Sterling's voice.
And Poppy's laugh, not any laugh, but like her sexy, sort of nervous laugh.
Right. Her, we might do sexy times right now laugh. And then he watches Sterling say, come on, Poppy, you know you want it. And then they kiss. And he just drops the flowers and bounces. He does not know what to do with himself. So then an odd series of events happens in his mind because he leaves. He goes back to his confessor, realizing that he now has nothing. He doesn't have a job anymore. He doesn't have Poppy anymore. He doesn't know what is going to happen. He's utterly and completely lost. And then when he works through it with Jordan, and Jordan's like, well, I think that if you were to repent and decide to stay, they would still have you. Like, you can rescind your resignation and atone.
Yeah.
It'll be a long road, but you can get there. And that's where he starts from. He's like, yes, I should absolutely do that. But then his bishop calls, and his bishop is like, there's a thing that happened. It's huge. It's all over social media. There are pictures of you with a woman. Yikes. And so now he kind of has no choice. He thinks that they're going to out and out fire him. And he asks the bishop, like, if there are any alternatives. And the bishop's like, I mean, there's a possibility that we could still have you at the church. It's going to be a lot more atonement than there already was going to be. But we could probably make it happen if that's what you want. But it has to be what you want.
Yeah.
And so he does some soul searching, and he realizes that it's not anymore. He wants to be doing anything else. He wants to be in Kenya digging wells or helping at homeless shelters or whatever. But he can't go back to the same parish right near Poppy and right near her house, whether or not she is there anymore.
Well, and it's this important thing that happens, and it's such a horrible, dark moment for him. And you just feel for him, like this sequence of events where he loses everything.
Yeah.
But you realize later that this has to happen because he can't give up the church for her.
Yep.
Like, that would always be hanging over their relationship. So like, he has to come to that conclusion outside of Poppy. And the only way for that to happen is this way. And I thought that was clever. Like, it needed to be in the plot, but I don't know if I would have recognized that writing it. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, it speaks to Sierra's power as a storyteller, that like, she knows she has to take you to this place at the end. Like, we know we're getting a happily ever after, but it can't happen because of Poppy. Like, he can't lose those things because, like, I mean, he does, but he has to make that choice on his own, even if he doesn't get her.
Exactly. And that is, so essentially, in a nutshell, he spends the next 7 months doing various things. Like, he spends a long time in sort of mourning and working through everything. Then he goes to Africa for a while to do some missionary work and to build schools and stuff, I think. And then comes back because he gets into graduate school, and he's really making a life for himself outside of Poppy. And then he realizes, he found out a while ago that she left the rosary at the club with his name on it so that he could get it back somehow. And it is killing him that she doesn't have his sister's rosary, because he gave it to her no matter what. And it's a source of comfort. It's been a source of comfort for him that he still wants her to have, whether or not she's with Sterling, because he thinks that she chose Sterling. He thinks that she is now Sterling's mistress. And so he decides that before he can start PhD, he needs to find her. And he does. He finds her via Sterling. He meets up with Sterling and finds out that the reason the social media pictures were out there is because Sterling was soundly rejected by Poppy right after she kissed him. And he made good on his threat. So now he's just utterly baffled because he can't figure out why they're not together if she didn't choose Sterling. And I thought that was so powerful because it really was Poppy asserting her own, not just boundaries, but like the way she wants to organize her life. She could not be in a relationship with him where she always wondered if she took something from him. Right.
It's the flip side of what we were saying with him, where like, she just couldn't live with that. And
right. And it's gorgeous. So he finds her in a church, comes up behind her, and he uses little lamb, or my lamb, which is how her whole body stills. And she's like, I can't believe you're here. So there's this reconnection moment in the church where she says, I saw you coming. I had a feeling you were there to choose me, and I needed you not to choose me. I needed you not to lose the church because of me. And so I pushed you away, and I decided that you were better off without me. You could still be of service to your parish, and you could still do God's work, and I would find a way to be happy. And he's like, well, that's just never gonna happen because I loves you so much. And he proposes right there. And it's incredible.
Yeah. It's the payoff.
It's gorgeous.
It's such a like sexy, emotional, spiritual, like deep book that it could be at its surface like, oh, it's a naughty priest. And that's what drew me in. I was like, yeah, I'm here for the naughty Dom priest.
Totally.
And then you just get slapped in the face with something bigger and deeper than that. And I think that's, again, like Sierra's power as a writer. Like that's what she brings to the table. Every book she writes, it's like at its surface, it should be something, and she makes it something else, something like deeper and that haunts you and sticks with you after you've read it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sinner is all about the second brother who is who's like a bad boy kind of dude, but then he meets re-meets I think they're called postulates. She's on her way to being a nun.
Yeah.
And she's like, I need to find out if I'm missing anything. So teach me if I'm missing anything. I need to do some experimentation.
Test my desire. Yeah.
Yeah. And it goes from there. It's so, so good. So yeah, all the stars, highly recommend.
Yeah.
Enjoyed my face off with this book. And cried. Sinner also made me cry hardcore.
Yeah.
In other ways. Like, it's so, so good. Yeah. So yeah. Jenny, this is the portion of the show where we do a self-love recommendation. And that can be as literal or not as you would like.
So vibrators. No. Yeah, I had been stressing about this because I was like, fuck, what am I going to recommend that like I'm in this weird place in my life where I was like, I don't want to just give like a mommy recommendation or, like things that make my life easier as a parent. So you should maybe give yours because I thought I had it up. There is a fellow reader who makes this handmade jewelry that has like lines from all of our favorite books in them, like those lines that just like stick with you. And it's such cool jewelry, and I'm trying to remember what her actual company is called. So you give your lady love while I look this up.
Okay. All right. Let me think. This is awkward because I never record episodes this far in advance. So I want to talk about Ember leaving, but that's not going to be applicable.
Yep.
Okay. You know what? It's cold. And I'm going to give a really, really simple one this time, but I use a French press when I make coffee, and my favorite thing to do in like the fall and winter is to add cinnamon directly to the French press.
Ooh.
When I'm directly to the grounds when I'm making coffee. And because it does this thing where like, unlike adding cinnamon directly to your coffee afterwards, a lot of time that clumps up. But with the like putting it in the French press, it never clumps up. And if it does, the clumps get pushed all the way to the bottom. So you just have this beautiful cinnamon essence to your coffee that doesn't make you cough sometimes because it's just clump of cinnamon.
I love that. That's such a simple thing that I would not have thought about.
That is my current lady love. Sometimes nutmeg is fun to play with too.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so there is a woman named Terry Ellenberg, and she's like an avid reader. I met her on the internet through one of our book groups for a series that I'm obsessed with, and she makes jewelry, and her company is called So Beautifully Broken Jewelry. And you can find it. She's got like a Facebook group where she does weekly sales, but then I think she's also on like Etsy and has a website and whatever. And so it's this gorgeous handmade. She like reuses materials like old license plates and coins and whatever. But she also does like those lines from books that just like hit you in the gut. Or like I'm looking on her page, there's a pendant that says, "We're the granddaughters of the witches you weren't able to burn." Or like, just those like deeply powerful lines and symbols and whatever. And it's like really cool stuff. And she's awesome. So that is my like plug, a cool reader, but also just like awesome jewelry. And cool gifts for like readers or people where you're like, I don't know what the fuck to get them. And it's like,
And it's beautifully broken jewelry.
Mm-hmm. So beautifully broken.
All right.
And Terry Ellenberg is her name.
All right. Perfect. Wow. This has been the most fun.
Yeah.
It's like, it makes me so happy that we actually got to connect. Thank you.
Well, I love like when I'm listening, Andy Christopher said this about our show once. She's like, it's like listening to a really great conversation with tape over my mouth. Like I always want to be able to jump in. Like you or Aaron will say something and I'm like, but I have something like I want to say it too. And this time I finally got to. So
yeah.
Thanks
absolutely.
HBs for having me. And so may I say that your Facebook group the cult is a lovely, pleasant place to be. And I love you guys. And I'm terrified of Facebook. So I feel like our podcast is not very active on Facebook and it's making me feel like I need to reconsider like that there are pockets of Facebook that are happy, safe, loving places. So
yeah, that's the thing is like, I don't really use my Facebook personally anymore unless I post something on Instagram and it links directly to Facebook. I don't do that. I literally just go there for the cult. And we've actually had a couple of members have to reapply because it's a closed group because they were like, I needed to deactivate my account and create a new one so that I don't have any of those toxic friends anymore. I am just here for my groups.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really smart.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love it there. It's the best place on the internet, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. But yeah, HBs, I am among you. And if you want to come check out our podcast, it is the Wicked Wallflowers Club. And we talk about romance too, but we usually interview the authors themselves and like talk about new releases. And we do episodes where we just do like downloads of everything we've been reading. And then if you guys are interested in checking out my book, it's nonfiction. So brace yourself. It pulls no punches. If you are easily offended or easily grossed out by the freaky fucking things that humans do, it's probably not for you. But if you are curious,
if you're a melody,
then
you should read this book. It's so good, you guys.
But it's also it's only out in hardback right now, and they're switching editions, and it's like some ridiculous price. So if you want to read it but are freaked out by what they have it listed at, shoot me an email and I will make things happen that I can't talk about on a podcast, but a book might mysteriously arrive in the mail or on your Kindle. Seriously though, like if you guys want to read it, just email me at wickedwallflowersclub@gmail.com and I will shoot you either the hardback or the Kindle.
Well, and they can follow the podcast on other social media, right? You want to give them those handles?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook for the podcast, and it's at WCKD Wallflowers. So at Wicked Wallflowers. And then I'm also there as a human person author thing. And that would just be Jenny Nordbak on all platforms. So
excellent.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah. And then you can, of course, find us on all the places. Instagram is at Heaving Bosoms. Twitter is at Heaving_bosoms. I hate doing this. Facebook is at Heaving Bosoms Podcast. There is, of course, the aforementioned Heaving Bosoms Geriatric Friendship Cult. And you can always send us emails about anything and everything at heavingbosomspodcast@gmail.com. And we love you. And we want you to follow us so that we can talk to you on the internet, sort of in real life, but not really. And
take the tape off your mouth and join in the conversation.
Yeah!
Like, I get so excited when people are like, I heard this and I have this recommendation. And I'm like, fuck yes.
Yeah, that's the best. All right. So keep being a badass.
Love yourself as much as you love worshiping cunts in a sanctuary.
Yes! All right. Thank you so much again. We adore you.
Thank you.
And have a great day.
Yeah. Good luck with the maternity leave.
Thanks. Bye.
Hey, you. Yes, listener, you. Are you loving the show? If so, please leave a rating and review in your podcast app. The 90 seconds you take to say something nice not only helps new people find the show, but it makes me super smile over at HBHQ. Also, I've had a few people ask, and the answer is yes. We are still doing the 5-star bribe. If you leave us a review with 5 stars, then we'll do whatever book you want. We're real deep into the list though, so it might be a while. Lilas! Okay, back to the show.